Risha, over to you.
I'll be helping you all with the language interpretation system today. So to begin, I would like to request everyone to follow my cursor. As you can see, there are various icons on the bottom of your screen. To choose the language interpretation of your choice, you have to click on the globe icon where you can see all the languages available. To be more specific, if you want to listen in Nepali language, you have to select Nepalese icon. If you want to listen in Hindi, you have to select Hindi icon. If you want to listen in Marathi, you have to select Marathi. And similarly, if you want to listen in Kannada language, you have to select Kannada. If you have any difficulties, please send us a message in chat to JST Corp 7. Thank you.
Thank you, Grisha. Good afternoon, everyone. Dear children, colleagues, youth development stakeholders, and friends. Hello, I'm Darshini Sanviratna, Advisor for Adolescent Development and Participation at the UNICEF Regional Office in South Asia. Welcome to this dissemination of case studies on adolescents participating in governance in South Asia. It's a unique series with new forms of analysis on children's rights to participation. This series of case studies have engaged dozens of adolescents and practitioners in understanding how participatory public sector planning is taking place in South Asia, often with a strong policy basis. The countries we focus on for this series are Bhutan, India, and Nepal. We hope it will enable discussions on transformative models for adolescent development that change the lives of adolescents for the better. Before we begin, just a few notes. The agenda has been shared with you. After the opening remarks and the writer's presentation, we will provide you the opportunity to clarify any points with the presenter. Fuller discussions and deliberation will be at the end of all the inputs from countries. Once the three countries are presented, we will then open up the floor for discussion. So those of you with questions will be requested to write their questions on chat, and those who are unable to do so may be able to speak up and get yourself heard. For the chat questions, we will identify and request you to ask the questions verbally. All modes will be facilitated for asking questions, and interpretation will be available for those who need it. Please remember to keep your mics on silent and put it on only when you speak. As we will have video panels for speakers, your videos will be disabled. So now to begin, we have the pleasure to share a video by Kajal Ralagonka, who is a friend of UNICEF South Asia and has worked with us for years now. She's 17 and she's the president of the Gatkur Children's Council in Maharashtra, India. The club is mandated to engage with the Gram Panchayat system there, and its story forms a part of the case study series that everyone will be speaking about today. Thank you to Kajal for all the preparation and to UNICEF Maharashtra for the video. The video, please.
नमस्कार, मी काजल चांगदेव राडेगावकर भारतातील महाराष्ट्र राज्यातील घाटकुड्या ग्रामीण भागात राहते. मला प्रवास करायला आणि पुस्तके वाचायला खूप आवडते. मोठी अधिकारी बनून लोकांची सेवा करण्याचे माझे स्वप्न आहे. मी मागील 4 वर्षापासून बालस्नेही पंचायत या उपक्रमाशी सोबत काम करत असून माझा अनुभव हा खूप सकारात्मक आहे. बालस्नेही पंचायतमुळे आम्हाला खूप काही शिकायला मिळाले जे पुढच्या भविष्यात उपयोगी ठरणार आहे. बालस्नेही पंचायतमुळे आम्हा सर्व बालकांना आमच्या हक्कांची जाणीव झाली. या दरम्यान लोकप्रतिनिधी व कर्मचारी यांच्यासोबत काम करण्याचा आणि त्यांच्याकडून शासन प्रशासनासंबंधी बऱ्याच गोष्टी शिकण्याचा अवसरही आम्हाला मिळाला. त्यांनी नेहमी आमचे म्हणणे ऐकून घेऊन आमच्या ज्या काही समस्या आहेत त्या सोडवण्याचा प्रामाणिक प्रयत्न केला आहे. हा जो काही अनुभव होता तो उत्साहवर्धक असाच होता. परंतु हे सर्व काही एकाच रात्रीत घडले असे नाही बरं का. पूर्वी त्यांनाही वाटायचे की मुलांना काय समजते, आम्ही मोठेच मुलांसाठी योग्य काय अयोग्य काय हे ठरवू शकतो. पण जसे जसे आम्ही मुले आवाज उठवू लागलो आणि आमची प्रौढांना विचार करायला भाग पाडतील अशी मते नोंदवू लागलो, तसा तसा त्यांचा हा गैरसमज हळूहळू दूर होत गेला. चंद्रपूर जिल्ह्यात जेव्हापासून बालस्नेही पंचायत हा उपक्रम सुरू झाला आहे तेव्हापासून बालकसुद्धा प्रौढांसोबत गावाच्या विकास प्रक्रियेत सक्रिय सहभाग घेत आहेत. बालस्नेही पंचायत उपक्रमामुळे बालकांमध्ये नवीन ज्ञान आणि कौशल्य मिळण्याबरोबरच बालकांचे प्रौढांसोबतचे संबंध अधिक चांगले झाले आहेत. एक व्यक्ती म्हणून सुद्धा वैयक्तिक आयुष्यात खूप बदल झाले आहेत. मी बालकांच्या हक्कावर समर्थपणे आज आवाज उठवू शकते. बालक स्वतः चर्चेच्या माध्यमातून मोठमोठ्या समस्यांची उत्तरे मिळवू शकतात हे मी बालकांचे प्रतिनिधित्व करताना शिकले आहे. बालकामध्ये निर्णय घेण्याची कुवत निश्चितच असते हे मी स्वानुभवाने सांगू शकते. आज मला सांगण्यात अत्यंत आनंद होतो की बालकांना त्यांचे हक्क म्हणजे काय असते नुसते समजलेच नाही तर त्यांच्या हक्काविषयी आवाज उठवण्याचे त्यांना ज्ञान आणि कौशल्य सुद्धा प्राप्त झालेले आहे. बालकांना मुक्तपणे विचार करण्याची आणि व्यक्त होण्याची संधी बालपंचायत या मंचाने निश्चितच मिळवून दिलेली आहे. आणि आमच्या मागण्या, आमचे नाविन्यपूर्ण विचार गावातील प्रौढ अधिकारी पदाधिकारी यांच्यासमोर मांडण्याचा आत्मविश्वासही आमच्यात आज आलेला आहे. आज आम्ही अधिक जागरूक, संवेदनशील आणि आनंदी आहोत. धन्यवाद.
Okay. So that's inspiration from a child. And now we have the pleasure of inviting Nola Skinner, the Deputy Regional Director of UNICEF South Asia, to give the opening remarks. Over to you, Noala.
Thank you very much, Darshini. I just want to check, can I be heard?
Yes, you can be heard. We can't, yes, now we can see you and you can be heard very well. Yes,
yes,
go ahead.
I can be seen as well. That's great. Thank you very much. A very good afternoon to everyone. I see we have 120 participants and rising online here for this very exciting online event as we disseminate and discuss the case studies on adolescents participating in governance South Asia. So good afternoon again, everyone, dear children, dear government officials, dear partners, colleagues, and stakeholders. At UNICEF, we are committed to the empowerment of adolescents across our work in health, education, child protection, water and sanitation, climate change, inclusion, social protection. Supporting adolescents to know their rights and to claim their rights and their agency is key. Today, we're really happy to be sharing with you some of the findings of a series of case studies which document some of the more evolved practices in South Asia in transformative programming with and for adolescents. Under an umbrella title, Claiming Citizenship, Case Studies of Adolescents Participating in Governance in South Asia, the series refers to children's agency and participation in shaping their own well-being and that of their communities. And I think the video has given us the very first strong flavor of that this afternoon. There are 3 case studies from Bhutan, India, and Nepal. Actually 4 case studies because we have 2 from India, about fulfilling adolescent rights through state and community mechanisms that make sure they are the agents of change, influencers, and collaborators. The examples are from child protection, social protection, and governance. So are very connected to the thematic work at UNICEF and many of the initiatives that you work on. As children, government officials, civil society, and UNICEF staff will tell us today, this programming makes a difference in reaching development goals, places a focus on the child at the center of programming, and enables collaboration across sectors. This great collaboration creates very conducive policy environments, focuses on the agency, growth, and development of children, including adolescents, and connects adolescents to the spaces where decisions are made. We thank the governments and country offices in Bhutan, India, and Nepal, and the state offices of Madhya Pradesh and Maharashtra in India, who participated in this study and worked diligently with the UNICEF Regional Office for South Asia and the team. Our teams across the countries and in the regional office have been working around the clock to prepare for this event today. It's been a very busy weekend leading up to this event, so that we can showcase examples that have been so thoroughly documented and are about to be further shared. We also thank the Concern for Working Children, UNICEF's partner, who brings in decades of experience in child participation, for their great partnership and collaboration to getting us to where we are today. All the best for the event today and what promises to be an exciting set of interventions and discussion. We look forward to hearing from all of you who are working on adolescents, with adolescents and young people, government, civil society, private sector, and other stakeholders to see how we can replicate good practices and create sustained enabling environments for children and young people's rights. I wish you all the best with the meeting ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Noella, for those inspiring words. Thanks so much for being here with us. Now I introduce Yasumusa Kimura, who is the representative, the acting representative of the India Country Office, to speak a few words. Thank you. I guess she's not here yet.
Can you hear me well?
Yes, hi, Yasumusa. Yes, can hear you very well.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Distinguished speakers from India, Nepal, Bhutan, our partners and the young leaders joining us today. Deputy Regional Director, UNICEF Regional Office of South Asia, Noella, and colleagues. Let me begin by extending my congratulations on behalf of UNICEF India and to the ADAP section of the UNICEF ROSA, to you, Dashini, and to Kavita Ratna from Concerned for Working Children for pulling together this important Claiming Citizenship series. This is a core focus of our work across programmatic sections, showcasing the best ways in which the insights of young people and the children can be amplified and turning them into actionable policy inputs. And it is an effort exemplified by the case studies we are celebrating today. I'm delighted to see the Safe City initiative from Bhopal, India, and child-friendly local governance initiative from Maharashtra, India, featured in this report. I'd like to acknowledge our UNICEF colleagues from field offices of Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, who have worked hard to support and future these projects. And thanks regional office colleagues for documenting this work. Both models provide a remarkable and scalable best practice in leveraging local governance as an arena for child rights. The Bhopal initiative has expanded child protection intervention by embedding these efforts in urban self-governance, and Maharashtra initiative is part of UNICEF's partnership with the government of Maharashtra on child-friendly panchayats. This report also comes as the UNICEF India is transitioning to our new country program. One of the key shifts we are making in our approach to adolescent program is challenging ourselves to move from participation to empowerment as the primary paradigm for the adolescent engagement. I was very interested to note that case studies come from across various sectors. The one in Madhya Pradesh listed by child protection, but with a multiple sectoral lens. And the one in Maharashtra is led by social policy. It demonstrates how different networks can go beyond just programming for adolescents to see how adolescents can become critical agents of change. An important lesson emerging from this study is that whenever the opportunity was offered to adolescents to participate in governance, their engagement has been invigorating, and development outcome have sometimes been transformative. It reinforces our beliefs that children should be seen not as recipients, but stakeholders of development. And the other important outcome for me is that the importance of governance and system strengthening. This is not a low-hanging fruit by any means, and it will require collective work on our capacity and that of our partners. I'm confident that these case studies are excellent starting point for knowledge exchange across the region, and will pave the way for children's voices becoming core to local, rural, and urban governance structure in the years to come. Many thanks and good luck for the deliberations today. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Yasamusa, for highlighting the importance of the India case studies and as well as highlighting empowerment as a kind of a priority in programming for adolescents. And now it is our great pleasure to invite Kavita Ratna, a principal author of the document. They have worked very hard on this document, speaking to dozens of officials, children, other stakeholders to understand the real meaning of the case studies. So it's a huge privilege for me to introduce Kavita Ratna, Director of Advocacy at the Concern for Working Children. And also, I hope we can introduce Urmila. I don't know whether she is here. I know Dunu is not. But if Urmila is here to say hi, she is another principal author. Dunu Roy is not available today, but Urmila, hi Urmila. So
hi,
just
Darshini,
to say hi
thank you.
to Urmila and for the brilliant work you have done. And over to you, Kavita, for the presentation of the design, the findings, analysis, and recommendations of the study. Over to you.
Thank you very much. It's absolutely a pleasure and a privilege. I will start with my screen sharing, so I will use my slides to speak. Do let me know when you can see it.
We can see it if you can put on slideshow, Kavita.
Yes?
Yes, that's fine. Good luck.
Okay. So thank you very much for being here today. I'm so happy to share this findings and thoughts and ideas which came our way on behalf of Dunu, Urmila, and Darshini and her ADAPT team, which have been part of this whole study, from initiating it to overseeing it and to finally bringing it to this shape. I started thinking about what is it that was the most important thing for us coming out of this study. And undoubtedly, it is the inspiration we have found and we have carried with us from children. You already listened to Kajal. We listened to many, many such children during this process. Rachana, for example, from Nepal, said it all in a way, talked of how she was personally very happy to be part of child-friendly local governance, how she and her team actually built on the past of the previous children's clubs, and how they aspire for the entire country to be child-friendly, and most importantly, how they want spaces to speak without fear. Today, I'm so happy that many of the children we spoke to and their friends are in the audience today. And I really hope this presentation will be able to reach all of you, and that I will speak slowly enough so that your translators can help you to do that. Why did we even do this study? The idea of children's rights has been around for about 30 years now, but still, children's right to participation is very little understood, even less practiced. And to look at children actually participating with governance is quite a new notion despite the 3 decades. So we wanted to really look at what does this actually mean and how do we bring children's participation with their governments and governance into the front? What needs to be done to actually build the capacity, like we heard today, that young people need capacity. So what do we need to do to develop that? And also, how do we make sure that all the work we adults do, be it government, be it agencies like the UNICEF and the UN agencies or organizations like many of us, what do we need to do to make sure that we are promoting this? And what we felt was a good place to start would be to look at some good practices so that we can learn from them, to see what is working well, to see what needs to be improved, and also to how to make sure that it keeps going forward, that it doesn't stop, it's not put on a break. So we looked at many examples from within South Asia. Basically, we were looking at those projects which were supported by UNICEF, either directly in the field or at policy level, or had even had a history of working with. So we were looking at a connection with UNICEF, but we were also trying to look at examples that can tell us different stories that is set in different places. And after our search, we arrived at 4 examples. One example, like you already heard, is from Madhya Pradesh in India, which is called the Safe City Initiative. We'll talk about all of these a little more later. And this was set in the urban context. And then we looked at the child-friendly local governance and planning in Maharashtra, also in India, but deeply set in the rural context. And then we chose the child-friendly local governance example from Nepal, which is actually applicable in the entire country of Nepal. These 3 have a long history, but we also wanted to look at an emerging example, which was giving a lot of hope and had opened many doors. And we chose the Adolescent and Youth Participatory Review of the National Youth Policy from Bhutan. And we wanted to focus very clearly, not on the participation of all young people, which is also very important, but we were more concerned with the participation of those children who are very vulnerable, who are in a lot of difficulties. And we wanted to see what their agency, their power to decide was. We also wanted to see what is the relationship between the rights of adult young people and the duties of the adults. We also wanted to see, are there any laws or policies in the country or in the state which actually helps young people to participate in governance? But we also wanted to see, it's not young people participating, that's not enough. Are governments accountable to young people? And is there any structure? Is there any system, any mechanism for young people to do that? And the role of organizations like UNICEF and organizations like many of those who work with children, what has been their supportive role to make sure this happens? What have they done in the past? What are they doing now? And what do they need to do in the future so the young people can continue to be active strongly? And in terms of method, we said, let us look at all the important documents and policies and legislations, not just in South Asia, but internationally also, but looking closely at the country in which the examples were situated. And many of these, especially 3 of the examples, like I said, had a long history. So we wanted to go and look at what has been the history. Are there reports? Are there videos? Are there stories? Are there examples? And can we read it so that we understand the background? And of course, we wanted to talk to young people. But as you know, this whole study happened during the time of COVID. So no travel was allowed. And that was very sad because we just had to use online consultations with young people. And with the help of organizations working with them locally, we tried to use some tools like the one you saw here, which was a balloon, which talks of children to explain which are the children who are participating, which are the children who are left behind, what is it that they vision to apply and reach, what are the things that are lifting their work, what are the things that they're holding back, is just an example. But we tried to use these tools so that even though we could not meet them in person, we can try and find ways to interact, which is at least interesting for young people. We also spoke to members of different departments. We spoke to people from different ministries, UNICEF, organizations working on the ground with young people. And altogether, we spoke to about 43 young people, many of whom were representing their children's organizations or groups. We spoke to 32 government officials, 20 civil society organization members, and 10 members of UNICEF key staff who are supporting in each of the country and also at the regional level. And we also saw what is happening in these countries, in the region right now, in the immediate future of children, but also in terms of what's happening globally, so that we can understand their participation, the small details, but also the big picture. There was one risk though, because anytime we speak to adolescents and ask them about their problems, the issues they face, immediately there's an expectation that solutions have to be found. Otherwise, why waste time talking to these people over and over again? That was a risk. So we had to explain to young people that we are doing this in order to learn, and we may not have immediate solutions for any of their problems or challenges. We also had to look at taking time with governance structures who are anyway under pressure, and under COVID, there was a lot of responsibilities. People were dealing with hospitals and medicines and food, and really to take time to discuss this was really a luxury. And also when we kept saying, are young people participating in governance, different people understood it very differently. What is governance? Is it government? Is it the running of something? Is it implementing a program? Is it designing policy? So we had to spend a lot of time trying to unpack it for ourselves and for sharing it. And sometimes it was also interesting because there were different young people participating. They had different interest groups. They may not always want the same thing. So we also anticipated that to be possibly a risk. And of course, there was a lot of different levels of understanding on what is adolescent development, what are the principles of participation. And these are things we also had to deal with, but we also anticipated some of this. And as it's clearly, there was COVID imposed restrictions. So we had difficulty. There was no direct field engagement. And because we couldn't directly be in many of these places, we did not directly experience the real lives of children and their localities and their communities, which we otherwise would have had we met them in their countries and in their cities. And we also had to deal and take help of people who are on the ground in terms of who we can speak to, who we can't speak to. And we tried very hard to use technology, but as you know, being online was very difficult. And also, even if children were able to come online, because of COVID, they could not even gather in one room. So we had a lot of technology issues, but really hats off to all children who made tremendous efforts, sometimes coming from the village to the district headquarters, spending time with us, managing translation. We didn't have all of this technology at that time. We were doing one-on-one. So they were extremely patient. So we were able to deal with some of the limitations at least. And what do we have here now as case studies? We are able to look at some of the structures which have helped young people to participate. We have looked at what is it that has really helped young people to speak up, to express, to learn, to map, to analyze. So what have those tools been? And how have they used that to influence policy or decision makers? And we've also been able to identify to some extent what are the ways forward to all of these extraordinary examples. And one of the frameworks which actually came as a result of this study was we thought 5 things were very important, which we kept using in our reference, but we hope will be used by others later in the future. One was to look at A, which is agency. How effectively are young people able to take decisions? How can they influence? Do they have the information? Are they able to speak as individuals? Are they able to speak as a group? What is helping them? So agency. The next was S, which is for state. Does the state have rules and policies? Do they have a responsibility? Are they committed? Is it written down? Is it understood? Is it in practice? So what is the status of the second? The third is P for participation. We were looking at how the agency of young people and the responsibilities of the adults, how are they coming together? Has the state created any facilities for young people to speak, to have collaborative action? How are they being supported? And like earlier I said, we were very keen on inclusion. Many young people get left out. Very often children who are in the cities, who speak English, who are very conversant with computers, they are the ones very often taking part in many things. So how to make sure those who are completely left away are really at the center of this. And resolution, RE, was to look at children being heard, adults listening to them, but are decisions being taken which young people wanted? Is there a resolution to that? So these were the 5 elements we kept looking at constantly. Now to the 5 examples. They are very, very rich examples. I'm not sure I will do justice, but very quickly. When we look at the first example, which is set in Madhya Pradesh of India, the organization within CWC, the group working with child protection has been the lead in this program. And through the program, they have tried to make local governments responsive and responsible to children, much more than very often is in practice. And the focus also has been the children who are very vulnerable, like children who are from what are called denotified tribes, and the very poor in the communities, socially and economically, has really been the focus of this. And this project has involved a lot of capacity building of the government officials on what participation is and why listening to children is very important. And throughout the process, from the beginning to various stages, young people have been mapping, they've been doing auditing, they've been doing assessments on what their issues are and also what solutions they need. And this program has involved Anganwadi workers, frontline workers, and a very deeply, very well entrenched work of social organizations who have worked with children on Safe City Initiative, but also on many other issues, which has also been very supportive. And they have built a lot of levels of mechanisms where young people can talk to local governments. For example, they've had child-based groups in the community, they have child protection committees, and all of them have used information management very effectively. What they've also done is they've created many examples where the decision makers and children directly interact face to face at the local level, at the district levels, and also at the state level. And interestingly, they have brought together different departments from the government. Usually, when we say children, it is the Women and Child Department, but this project also has brought in the police, the revenue department, a lot of officials locally. They've all been very supportive. And at this point in time, the Safe City Initiative has a lot of support, and chances are that it is likely to expand to many, many more cities. Now, moving to Maharashtra. This project, which is the child-friendly local governance, is actually here led by the social policy sector, unlike what is happening in Madhya Pradesh. And what it has also done is, in India, the constitution supports devolution, meaning at local governments have a lot more power in terms of taking decisions and also implementing them. So this project has used that facility, bottom-up planning, and children's participation and community participation and moving up is very important. So they're very well deeply working with that bottom-up and rural decentralized government process. And also in a lot of these communities where this project is very active, there has been a long history of young people's participation. There have been programs like Deepshika, where adolescent girls were involved. So these young people were part of many other programs. So their thinking and understanding and empowerment was already at a certain high level. They were able to also work with this program very effectively. And constantly there has been capacity building of young people and their ability to take decisions in many, many milestones of the project. And what they also got is the state policy allows for the setting up of children's groups called Bal Sabhas, and their representatives talk to local governments And their representatives as Bal Panchayat interact with local governments almost on a regular basis. And at the state policy level, the support has also come because there is a budget earmarked for how much money should be spent where children and women are concerned and issues raised by women and children. And a lot of examples we were able to see where the communities earlier would spend basically on things like building roads and buildings had moved to looking at development related decisions because children were raising them. And what has also been very important is this whole program has linked with the capacity building unit of the state, which is called Yashada. And the state government is involved in building capacity of elected local government members and also officials on why it is important to listen to children and also how it should be done. Next, moving to another country, Nepal. Nepal also has a long history of children's clubs, almost from 1990, which has been supported by many, many organizations and also UNICEF. And simultaneously, Nepal also has a history of working with local governments, taking decisions about women and children, and helping local governments develop good development plans locally with people's involvement. So on one hand, the children's clubs process, on the other, the decentralization process, both have come together extremely well in this child-friendly local governance model. And what is also remarkable is when Nepal came up with its new constitution, children's participation and children's rights is now a part of the constitution of Nepal. And the child-friendly local governance has become part of the national policy. And this is indeed a very unique example in this entire region where at the national level, policy is so clearly speaking of participation and also children's engagement in governance. And at various levels, as the local governments have become stronger, the participation of children has also become stronger. And what is also very interesting is it is not just policy and law. The Nepal government has also come up with what are called guidelines, which are very, very detailed on how to support young people, what should be the representation, how should they raise their issues, how to respond to the issues. So there are indicators set out at every level for how the CFLG should roll out in the country. And also because of this very long history of children's clubs, many, many adults we met who are working with young people were actually graduates of children's clubs. So when we spoke to them, they spoke very fondly of how much they had gained from their experience, and they were able to support young people now because of their own history. And many of them are actively involved in the national CFLG process as adults as well. And what we also heard was because of the reorganization in the country, the local governments are now responsible for CFLG, and they also have a lot of resources in terms of money, but they would really probably benefit from inputs so that technically they're able to use that money very well. Lastly, Bhutan. This process in Bhutan is actually anchored by the Department of Youth and Sports of the Ministry of Education. So different sectors have come in, but they've all taken up children's participation, as we have seen. And in Bhutan, the democracy idea is very deeply linked to what is called the gross national happiness. So how happy are people? And the youth policy they are working on is very closely linked to how to keep young people happy and motivated. And the Bhutan Center of Media and Democracy, you will hear from their director soon, has been very closely involved in this. And they also built on what was called the History of Youth Initiative Program. So the young people they were working with, they involved them in the youth voices in Youth Matters, where young people talked of what kind of policies they want. And they made a lot of effort to bring in young people from different backgrounds, young people with disabilities, young people in welfare homes, young people who are actually young monks. So a range of young people were actually involved in giving inputs to this policy. CFLG in Bhutan, like I said earlier, is young. It is still starting. But what we found that there are many opportunities for CFLG to actually start in Bhutan at the local government level And the young people we spoke to were very welcoming to have this opportunity to actually shape not just the youth policy, but the shape democracy in their country. What did we find? We found that wherever young people had policies supporting them and their participation, where they had access to information, where they were able to think critically, they were able to analyze, where adults were ready to engage with them and help them in terms of their empowerment, where there were actually policy making structures open to listening to young people, and where adolescents were able to hold decision makers accountable, meaning that we said this, you made this commitment, what have you done about it? Going back and asking, and to have systems to do that, where all these existed, we saw that there was very high level of adult accountability and also a transformation, a good change in the community. And we are seeing now how to take all of this forward. These excellent examples are here, what to do with them. How do you take them beyond the cities they are in or the states they are in? How do we expand that? How do we continuously help young people? Because young people also grow up and they age out. So how do younger people who come in, how do they learn what has happened? How will those who are older transfer their history and experience to the younger people? And also how to build the capacity of all the adults who are involved, and very important. What kind of policies now do we need to bring in? And in some cases, as policies do exist, what kind of programs do we roll out? And most importantly, how much budget and money are we going to put into this? What we have also seen is that in different places, different sectors, different organizations have led the way. And the need of context and which country and the context of the young people has really been very key to design the program. Wherever young people have had a lot of good processes and structures, we have seen that is the way to go forward, and to support governments locally or state level or nationally to do things which will support this implementation, but to do it dynamically and organically, not set in stone, but reacting to what is happening to young people, listening to what their aspirations are, and to bring different sectors together, saying this is everybody's agenda. It is not one sector's agenda, it's everybody's agenda. And most importantly, where we are seeing these wonderful examples, how to make sure that when the project is stepping out from active involvement, it is leaving behind not just a history, but leaving behind a program or project that can continue to exist, because young people will continue to need this. Like I said, the young people we spoke to and the adults who are working with them and supporting them with a lot of challenges, they have tremendously inspired us. And we sincerely hope that they inspire all of you as well. Thank you very much. Can't hear you, Darshini.
Hi, I'm so sorry. Thank you so much for the very detailed and inspiring presentation where you spoke about spaces for children to speak without fear and to be heard, as well as there to be accountability mechanisms that responded to adolescents. And you also spoke of the Aspire framework, which we hope is going to be something that governs our lenses through which we look at programming. Thank you for the rich study and all the contributions you have made. And I just want to know whether Urmila would like to add anything, because I know that you've been so much a part of it.
Thank you, Darshini. I just wanted to reiterate the importance of a strong legislative and policy framework. I think we have seen that wherever that exists, it's easy then to co-opt participation into the agenda rather than the other way around. So it's a learning experience for me. And thank you to you, Darshini, for the opportunity and the learnings from UNICEF.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And we know your kind of commitment and absolutely the policy basis of a lot of the good practices that Kavita shared is to be kept in mind as we look at how we strengthen these mechanisms, as Kavita said, in a dynamic, organic manner. And now we go on to hear from the countries before we go into the discussion, just because of the time factor, and to listen to those who have co-created these stories Kavita spoke about, including children, UNICEF staff, civil society organizations, as well as, importantly, governments who have innovated within government systems, and we're looking forward to hearing from them. So to do that, I am happy to introduce you to two of my colleagues, two UNV specialists, Sirjan Adhikari and Sudhir Bhattaraj, who will introduce the country speakers and get you going on that journey. And we hope you find it as exciting as what you heard from Kavita and Urmila. Thank you so much. Over to you, Sirjan and Sudhir.
Thank you, Darshini. It is my pleasure to introduce co-creators and participants of the Safe City initiatives in Madhya Pradesh, India. We have 4 panelists who will be highlighting reflections and ways forward of the initiatives. We have Nargis, a young person who also participates in the initiative. And we also have Shivani Taneja from Muskan. Muskan is a civil society partner of UNICEF who contributed in the initiative. We also have Adwaita Marathe. She works as a child protection officer in UNICEF office in Madhya Pradesh. We also have Sri Anuradha Shankar, who is Additional Director General of Madhya Pradesh Police, Government of Madhya Pradesh, India. I can see all the speakers have turned on their cameras, and I request them to share their remarks turn by turn. Let's start with Nargis first, and I request Shivani, Adwaita, and Anuradha to come in that order later. Over to you, Nargis.
जी इन सभी को, मेरा नाम नरगिस है। मुझे पढ़ना और दूसरों की मदद करना अच्छा लगता है। मैं भोपाल शहर की एक बस्ती में रहती हूँ, जहाँ यूनिसेफ और इसके साथी संस्था ने कुछ साल पहले बच्चों के लिए एक कार्यक्रम सुरक्षित शहर पहल शुरू किया था। इस कार्यक्रम के तहत बच्चों के लिए कई गतिविधियों का आयोजन किया जाता था, जिसमें मैं भागीदारी करती थी। और इस तरह दूसरे बच्चों के साथ साथ मैं भी इस कार्यक्रम का हिस्सा बन गई। हमारे समुदाय में बच्चों के साथ कई तरह की तकलीफें थी। हमने अपने घरों और आस पड़ोस में बच्चों को आने वाली चुनौतियों, उनकी जरूरतों और जोखिमों को समझने के लिए एक शोध यानी मैपिंग का काम शुरू किया। इस शोध ने हमें विभिन्न समस्याओं की पहचान करने में मदद की, जिनका सामना हमारे समुदाय के बच्चे करते हैं, जैसे कई बच्चों का नियमित तौर पर स्कूल नहीं जाना, बड़े बच्चे विशेष रूप से लड़कियों का अक्सर स्कूल से ड्रॉप आउट होना, परिवार और समुदाय में यौन हिंसा और उत्पीड़न, स्कूलों में शारीरिक दंड दिया जाना, सार्वजनिक स्थानों पर और घरों में हिंसा, कुछ जगहों पर बच्चों की तस्करी, शराब की लत और इसी तरह की दूसरी समस्याएं। कई बच्चे जोखिमपूर्ण और कठिन काम भी करते हैं, जो न केवल उन्हें स्कूली शिक्षा से वंचित करता है, बल्कि उन्हें अन्य कई नुकसान भी पहुंचाता है। अपने परिवारों की मदद करने के लिए बच्चे खतरनाक व्यवसाय में काम करते हैं, जहां उन्हें शोषण और दुर्व्यवहार का सामना करना पड़ता है। कई बच्चे नशीले पदार्थों का सेवन भी करते हैं। हमने ये भी जाना कि हमारे आस पड़ोस में कितनी जगहें ऐसी थी जो बच्चों के लिए जोखिम भरी थी, जैसे कि वे जगहें जहां बिजली की व्यवस्था नहीं थी और हमेशा अंधेरा रहता था, खुले हुए कुएं, खुली नालियां, असामाजिक गतिविधियों में लगे लोगों के कब्जे वाले पार्क आदि। हमने ये सारी जानकारियां ट्रांजिट वर्क के माध्यम से एकत्रित की। धीरे धीरे हमने इन सभी समस्याओं पर काम करना जारी रखा और इनमें से कुछ समस्याओं का समाधान भी निकाला। हमने विभिन्न स्तरों पर सरकारी अधिकारियों से मिले, उनके साथ इन मुद्दों पर उनके साथ इन परिणामों को साझा किया और इन मुद्दों पर पैरवी की। वार्ड स्तर से लेकर राज्य स्तर तक हमारी कई बैठकें हुई। हमने बच्चों की सुरक्षा सुनिश्चित करने के लिए सड़कों, स्ट्रीट लाइट, सीवेज लाइनों की मरम्मत सुनिश्चित करने के लिए सूचना का अधिकार, मुख्यमंत्री हेल्पलाइन जैसे माध्यमों का इस्तेमाल किया और हमने पुलिस की गश्त भी बढ़वाई। स्थानीय पुलिस की मदद से असामाजिक गतिविधियों जैसे जुआ खेलने वाले लोगों को सार्वजनिक पार्कों से हटाया ताकि बच्चे बिना किसी डर के खेल सकें। हमने संबंधित विभागों जैसे नगर निगम के जिम्मेदार अधिकारियों के साथ बैठकें की और कार्यक्रम किए और उन्हें आवेदन और ज्ञापन दिए। हमने बच्चों के विरुद्ध हिंसा की रोकथाम और बच्चों को नशीले पदार्थों की बिक्री, रोकथाम आदि पर विभिन्न कार्यक्रमों जैसे कि नुक्कड़ नाटकों, पोस्टर प्रदर्शनियों के माध्यम से अपनी चुनौतियों और अधिकारों पर समुदाय के लोगों को संवेदनशील बनाया। शुरू में हमने पाया कि अधिकारियों के साथ चर्चा करना आसान नहीं था। वे हमें बाद में आने को बोलते या फिर कहते दफ्तर से बाहर जाओ। वो कहते कि दफ्तर से बाहर जाने को कहते और वे हमारे साथ रूखा व्यवहार करते। वो कहते जाओ वयस्कों के साथ आना, या फिर वे हमसे बड़ी देर तक वहीं अपने दफ्तर के बाहर इंतजार करवाते। लेकिन हमने भी हार नहीं मानी और हम डटे रहे। आखिर में उन्हें ही हार माननी पड़ी। जब भी हम इनसे मिलने जाते तो समूह में जाते। एक या दो बच्चे अकेले अकेले जा रहे होते तो शायद कोई नतीजा नहीं निकलता। कुछ मामलों में कुछ वयस्क हमारे साथ गए। साथ जाने से ये फायदा हुआ कि बच्चों के बारे में उनकी धारणाएं बदली। उन्होंने महसूस किया कि हम गंभीर हैं और हम समाधान भी चाहते हैं। ये सही है कि ये सब अचानक से नहीं हुआ, धीरे धीरे हुआ, लेकिन हमने कभी हार नहीं मानी। ये सभी काम हम बच्चों और किशोरों ने मिलकर किया। हम सबकी भागीदारी से ऐसा हो पाया है। इसलिए ये जरूरी है कि बच्चों और किशोरों की भागीदारी पर ध्यान दिया जाए। भागीदारी करना हमारा अधिकार है और इससे हम जैसा बदलाव चाहते हैं वैसा बदलाव लाना भी संभव हो पाता है। यूनिसेफ से हम सभी बच्चे आग्रह करना चाहेंगे कि इस भागीदारी को और मजबूत करने में हमारी सहायता करें। बच्चों के साथ साथ बड़ों को भी बताएं कि हमारी भागीदारी कितनी महत्वपूर्ण है और साथ ही हमारा अधिकार भी है। इससे वे हमें सुनेंगे भी और हमारी बातों पर कार्रवाई भी करेंगे। इसी तरह हम हमारी सरकार और विभागों से ये उम्मीद करते हैं कि वो बच्चों के मुद्दों पर गंभीरता पूर्वक बात करें। सभी अधिकारी हमारी बात सुने, इसके लिए सरकार योजनाएं बनाए। बच्चों से जुड़े सरकारी कामों या बैठकों में हमारी भागीदारी सुनिश्चित की जाए। हम सभी बच्चे कल का नहीं बल्कि आज का भी भविष्य और नागरिक हैं। धन्यवाद।
Thank you, Nargis. You shared a lot, and I think I'm going to take on from what Kavita and Nargis have already shared a bit about the safe city, and you see the children speaking. I would like to emphasize what Darshini also brought up earlier, that it has been important to have children in the center of the program. But when we say center, it doesn't mean that all of us adults are concerned about children and they are the center of or they are the focus of adults, or that we are just involving children, but it's rather that you see them as important participants and important decision makers of the program as to what the adults should be doing. I think the Safe City program has tried to do it, and we've managed quite a bit, and we need to see how we build on that principle of participation as we move further as UNICEF or as civil society organizations who have all learned what participation really means when we talk about child rights.
I feel it's very easy that children are taken over, because all of us who come from the educated world, who come as organizational leaders or as well-wishers of children, we easily take up thinking that we know better. And the children that we work with are much younger to us, and they come from much more marginalized backgrounds. So their voice can easily become invisible unless all of us are very conscious about this effort. And I really appreciate that through the Safe City program, I as an individual have also learned a lot, and as organization and as Bhopal, we've been able to put this in the center. I would like to say what putting children in the center really means then further. It means that for me and for Muskan and for the civil society organizations in MP, it has meant that we give them the table, we give them the platform. We hear children, and our role becomes to ask the questions and ask the right questions. And then and also when we get children's views, then we prepare or facilitate them to be able to share those views outside, because they also come with this. Our culture has made children as quiet children. Our schools make children as quiet students. So how do we create that culture where children feel confident of sharing what they feel and hearing themselves, and also in hearing the others? Because the process implies a lot of listening. And when we work through collective groups of children, which the Safe City program has done, then the collective groups also mean that each child listens to the other, because the representation means only some of them would be able to take the view forward. So how do we, within children's groups, also listening to each other rather than taking your focus on the adult itself, herself, easily. The children then prioritize problems. They decide to work on these problems because the communities have many issues. So which problems should we work with? Which aspect of your life is more disturbing for you? And how do you decide which problem to prioritize is what the process further implies. And then we take this further, that children go to platforms and share their views. And I again want to emphasize that many of us adults really believe in we live in a world which is more make-believe, even though children are supposed to be naive and they believe in a certain kind of a world. But I think in the social work sector and the development sector, we live in a world which is more, hope. We feel that we have the solutions, but we really don't have the solutions. So it's important that we realize that we don't have magic wands, but the children have more hope. They are more permanent in the community, and that is why investment in them is more important for all of us. I would like to further add a bit on the role of civil society organizations in our work, where one side is the communities and the children that we work with, and the other side, or not the other side, on the lives are determined by adults, more so stakeholders like the government and other adults, because communities themselves are vulnerable. So it's not really that their parents are in the entire decision-making role. So how do we get these children who are living on the margins have access to the state and the larger spaces where decisions are being made which impact them? And while we do this, we need to see that they are able to speak and others are able to hear them out. And as civil society organizations, we are always in the arena that whose perspective are we going to carry, whose language are we going to speak? Are we going to become part of the decision makers agents, or are we going to become a mediator between the two, and also enhance children's capacities as well as the government agencies and stakeholders who are making these decisions, as well as our own, because we learn from all these spaces rather than coming with the solutions ourselves. Through these years, there has been a I feel that learned a lot, and one is that community to community, geography to geography, the experiences are very different. And therefore, solutions and discussions and deliberations need to be happening at each ground level rather than coming as a top-down approach. And when you invest in children, then even if the change doesn't happen immediately, there is an information, there is a leadership which grows in these adolescents, and they take forward that change outside the NGO also. Also, a child, I would like to emphasize here that the child is a full unit, but the programs function in compartments. So therefore, when we bring the children on board, then we are also forced to realize that what all impacts this child's life. Is it the police? Is it the health? Is it the education? And we need to see how we plan our programs better when we talk to children and bring them on the board. There's been a humbleness in our programs in which I think we've all learned. I would just end with one last point that UNICEF and the broader sector needs to continue investing in children's participation, because if we don't do that, NGOs and civil society would flow where the funds are flowing. So that it's very important to keep that focus intact. Then you need to build capacities for people to do that. We need to we need to give time to children and to the organizations to bring results on the ground, because this process takes time and it builds up one over the other rather than a short time period. We need to also see how different stakeholders give opportunities for children to speak, hear them properly, and see how much we are able to change our programs or prioritize our programs as per what the children are saying, rather than sometimes seeing child rights issues as problems. We need to see that children are giving us the answers, or children are really saying, because there is no magic solution to the conditions that we live with. That's my point. Thank you for this opportunity to share my views of the past 8-9 years of work in the Safe City program. Thank you.
Thank you, Shivani, and thank you, Nargis. तुमने भी बहुत बढ़िया से सेफ सिटी में हमने जो भूमिका की है वो डाला है. I would also like to thank the organizers for this opportunity where we are able to share our insights on the agency, participation, and civic engagement of children and adolescents based on our Safe City initiative. This initiative was conceptualized in 2015 with the key objectives of ensuring safety and protection of children with 3 key underpinnings. One was a strong focus on the equity lens, which focused on the most marginalized, focus on the urban settings, and a strong engagement with the government system. So these were 3 key pillars. Participation of children and adolescents and youth in civic engagement and governance was integrated as a critical component of the initiative. Now, why did we focus on participation? Inclusion is a core principle, we believe, of good governance, and that implies also to inclusion of children. This cohort of children and adolescents is not homogeneous, is challenged by multiple vulnerabilities, bases their social location, their age, sex, caste, economic status, education status of the family, and that influences their access to and availability of developmental and empowerment resources, opportunities, and this impacts their agency and participation. Secondly, children are right holders, and they have an equal right to participation and a right to be heard. There is a need to change the dominant narrative that looks at children only as beneficiaries, only as those who require care or they lack maturity and experience to analyze, choose, and decide what is appropriate for them. Adults presume, as Shivani also mentioned, that they know it all and they have to decide for children. Thus, it was critical to develop a nuanced understanding of what participation would mean per se in all kinds of settings, whether family, community, or government systems. In our experience, the child-led participatory mapping of protection issues in urban slums and the data analysis undertaken by children was a game changer for their sustained participation and civic engagement. It helped build a strong foundation for articulating their demands effectively and ensuring their meaningful participation, as well as visibilize children as agents of change. As Kavita mentioned in her presentation, to reach this stage, A lot of efforts and activities were undertaken. Children, adolescents and youth were mobilized, collectivized. Their groups was capacitated on child rights schemes and other services they were entitled to. CSO partners contributed in the capacity development, mentoring, and community-based facilitation by using various methods for civic engagement, including theater, art, games, and others. These capacitated children and youth groups and their representatives engaged with the elected representatives and the administrative system to inform them of their concerns, their needs, and their suggestions, to place their demands, and to work together for solutions. In doing so, they were facilitated to interface and negotiate with the district and state level agencies, including high court judges, ministers, several department heads, the municipal corporation, police, and others. Our experience was that in all these engagements, the most powerful tool, or what left an impact, was the strength of the children's collectives, the confidence with which they spoke, and the power of information, which was based basically on the mapping and the data which they had evidenced. All these processes, they were gradually able to bring change in the community, which included actions on civic and protection priorities. For example, they could ensure consistent water supply, regular garbage collection, better street lighting, and regular maintenance of roads and bylanes, as also preventing child marriages, negotiating with community panchayats, strengthening community systems to prevent abuse and exploitation of children, including sexual abuse and child labor, actions against corporal punishment, sending out of school children back to school, etc. So several kinds of actions were initiated and took place because of children's participation. Simultaneously, CSO partners also worked with the adult-led community and systemic structures to build their perspectives on child rights and participation, so that the negotiations, and it created space and opportunity for children to participate. Now, basis our experience, we feel that to institutionalize children's participation, the first key thing is that they should be treated as rights holders, and platforms and structures should be made available to them as part of the mainstream system where they participate as equals, and their opinions are given the same dignified and respectful treatment as that of any adult. Secondly, measures have to be taken for their economic, social, and political empowerment and engagement, which includes access to information. This is a key. Positive discrimination may also be adopted to help them to be on par with others during development. Government should strongly embed children's participation into various schemes, programs, and governance structures. And for this, capacity of government functionaries should be strengthened towards accepting this. There should be adequate budgetary allocations as well. Agencies like UNICEF have a critical role to play in this as well. We should be able to bring the global knowledge and praxis towards strengthening participation and civic engagement of children and adolescents. We should support the counterparts and partners in conceptualizing the various plans and developing strategies and advocating for with the governance structures for strengthening children's participation. We should also focus on looking at budgetary utilization. I would just give this, elaborate this with two examples. When we were framing the Madhya Pradesh Child Protection Policy and the State Action Plan for Adolescent Empowerment, children were actively engaged. Their inputs were sought, and they were part of the processes which led to formulation of the Child Protection Policy and the State Action Plan. To conclude, one would just say that Safe City initiative for us has demonstrated that a replicable model of children's participation within the framework of the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child and urban governance with inclusion of the most marginalized it is a successful model and can be replicated. And as was said earlier by Kavita and even Shivani, children, adolescents, and youth who have been through the process, who have now become youth, they have now become our advocates, and they are now taking this process forward. So we believe that children, adolescents, and youth who go through these processes, they continue to influence and impact upon the adult power structures. Thank you for this opportunity to share our views here.
Good evening, friends. At the outset, let me congratulate you for taking out this wonderful report. And I must congratulate all my friends at UNICEF and their partner organizations and the children. I'm very glad to be here as a part of this program. I've been associated with the Safe City program since its very beginning. What is a police officer doing here? What is a senior police officer doing here, representing the whole government? The thing is that if you were listening closely to Nargis, you might have noticed that what she's talking about most is abuse, exploitation, denial of rights, and duties without any recompense. So that is all in the purview of the law enforcement agency. It's an unfortunate situation, but that is the situation everywhere where children are concerned. Nargis said another very important thing. She said that this world is ours. So instead of this inheritance, it's not an inheritance for her, it's a matter of ownership. This earth is not an inheritance for the children, it's a matter of ownership for the children. And that was a very important point which Nargis made. And I want to build on that. That for that in Madhya Pradesh, with my friends at UNICEF and their friends in the civil society organizations, we looked at a multi-agency effort for child safety. And the success of the Safe City program is reflected in that now the Madhya Pradesh government, along with the UNICEF, is taking it beyond the capital city of Bhopal. And we are now touching base in many other cities, replicating the experience that we have had in Bhopal. So this gives you a measure of the success of the Safe City program. For most people, police is an instrument of distress. For the children, it's even more so. Because as the police distresses the family structure, the social structure, I have no hesitation in accepting that. As the police organization or the government organization or the regulatory organizations, they distress the social structure, the maximum load of distress comes on the lowest common multiple, which is the child. Because in the family, that is the last person who's to be oppressed. So where in India particularly, we have a guardianship model of governance. In many countries, we have a warrior model of governance, where there's the government versus the people. But in India, we have a guardianship model of governance, which is not the ideal model of governance. I suppose the ideal model would be the service model of governance. But in India, we have the guardianship model for whatever reasons, for the post-colonial legacy or whatever. So with this guardianship model of governance, we have been trained to look at things which have an influence in decisions. Over the years, adults of various hues, various communities have slowly got into the rights discourse and have found their space, but children did not find that. For the simple reason that they do not participate in the electoral system in the country. And because of that, the guardianship model does not include or did not include children. I'm very thankful to UNICEF for awakening us to this. And with this program, we actually started participating in understanding that even if we are a guardian of the society as the government, we need to look at those people whom we have completely overlooked, and they are the children. What I must also congratulate you for is the capacity building. Of course, I am very fascinated by the incredible capacity that the children have shown. Shivani ji has talked about it right now, about the agency that they have, that the qualitative understanding of issues that they have. But I have watched it from the beginning, and I must tell you that people like Shivani Taneja or people like our friends at the UNICEF need to be congratulated for the hand-holding that they did. for the capacity building that they did, because what they got was not a clean slate, but what they got was a very fuzzy screen, and they cleaned it up. And the children slowly, and now that Nargis is talking to you with such articulation and understanding, has a lot of hand-holding behind that. And a lot of discussion, argument, of course, at an equal level, a conversational level, but it has been there, and I must congratulate all of you for that too. The research that the children did, I mean, it was a pleasure, and I showed it to my research team about how the children mapped the areas. And the mapping, we used many of those maps. My friend Loli Chen is a witness to that we used many of the mapping that the children did, and the advocacy that they did. We have used much of that. So this is my just the beginning of my congratulations. There are a few points which I want to make. We have taken some steps to integrate children's rights and child participation at a policy level, particularly in the police department. We are working with the UNICEF on designing a curriculum, and we have also, UNICEF has roped in the Tata Institute of Social Sciences for that too, for designing a curriculum for basic training of police in child rights. The problem is that when the police come wear their uniform, or whenever any government servant, any government agency comes to its workplace, they do not have children in their mind. And this has to be built in at the basic level. So when they are inducted, in their very induction training, in their orientation, we have planned to have a good course on child rights and participation of children in governance, conversations with children. And we are working on that. It's almost at the final stage. Adolescent participation in this program has also changed my way of looking at personally, at a personal level, and also my colleagues' way of. You saw some police officers, when you saw the photographs from Bhopal, you saw some police officers sitting on stage where the children were speaking, and all of them have been touched by this change, and they have understood that there is something here we need to learn. We need to learn from these citizens whose experience is at the most fundamental level. And that's what we have learned. UNICEF can do a lot to support the government, and particularly the law enforcement and the regulatory authorities in research, advocacy, capacity building, and understanding how we can improve our own skill sets to deal with matters related to children, because they are from human trafficking to child labor to domestic abuse. There's a whole spectrum which we need to address. What more can governments do? Governments, from these case studies, there are a lot of learning points, and which give a pointer to the governments to understand that conversations are very important to policy making. And as we have conversations with various stakeholders, we must not forget that children are important stakeholders, that their rights are a key to a respectable and dignified society. If we want to be known as proper democracy of a mature society, children cannot be ignored. As Mahatma Gandhi said, that every right has a commensurate duty to it, which means one person's right is another person's duty. So the government here has a duty to guarantee the rights of the children, because they have not been really given a guarantee, honestly. If you look at it, and someone was talking about the legal framework and how the correction is needed in the legal framework, and I totally agree with that. And this is what I was thinking, but this is how we can take this whole story forward. My best wishes to all of you for further, deepening of understanding of this issue and participation with the government. We are always ready to participate with you. We are there to walk with you every step of the way. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. What a wonderful and powerful story by Nargis. She really punched and knocked it out. And thank you, Shivani. and Anuradha and Advaita for adding on all those stories on that. So not being later, I'd like to introduce our another team from Maharashtra. So to highlight their reflections and ideas. I'd like to welcome Ms. Anuradha Nair, Social Policy Specialist from UNICEF Maharashtra, Sanket Rahul Gaurkar from Child Friendly Bal Panchayat, Chandrapur District, and Mr. Sumit Gurjar, Director, Center for Research and Documentation, Yashoda, Maharashtra. So I'd like to welcome them all and share their findings and things in this program. And one thing I'd like to remind is let's be on time. So not more than 5 minutes. I'd like to request with all the speakers. Thank you.
Thank you, Darshini and ADAPT section, UNICEF South Asia for this documentation series and giving us space. And thanks to Kavita and the CWC team for adequately capturing the lessons learned from these innovations and defining the way forward. We heard it, a right to participate is an unchallengeable right of each child. It's also a pragmatic strategy for realizing their rights to education, skilling and employment, health protection, including social protection, clean water and sanitation, and a sustainable environment. And we know that this is even more crucial at this juncture with mounting vulnerabilities due to COVID-19. UNICEF Maharashtra had always put community participation, especially the young people participation, at the heart of most of the programmatic interventions that we have done. We have been working on improving systems, building capacities of institutions and communities for realization of child rights within the larger enabling policy framework. But we also know that for these, these aspects to translate into actual results, participation is non-negotiable. So we experimented with different models with rights-based and gender-responsive approach to governance with a very firm foundation for community participation. And so we heard it in Kavita's presentation also. If you look at the local context where Gram Panchayat, we call it village councils, they are the closest unit of governance, and they are well positioned in terms of influencing the lives of women and children constructively. When we look at this platform, while we have legally mandated spaces for Gram Sabha, like Gram Sabha, Makkala Sabha, for citizens engagement, there is no such space for children. So we implemented various models like community convergent program, school in development, adolescent life skills education, which is called Deepshika, young warriors, Bal Mitras under kinship care model for seasonal migrants. A number of initiatives were tried out. And in all these experimentations, volunteerism, child participation, community-centered management, institutional strengthening remained as invariable principles. Now, child-friendly Panchayat was a step forward for us in our journey. We focused on demonstrating a model in which children engages with the village council to influence planning, budgeting, and monitoring. And the model gave equal importance to child participation along with institutional strengthening. So we leveraged every opportunity and existing policy prescriptions to create this model of child participation at the governance sphere. The national and the state policies for children invariably mention the right of child to participate in decisions affecting their lives. The policies also require federal and local governments to take necessary actions to facilitate it. Child-friendly Panchayat, in other words, demonstrated this possibility. The model had a multi-pronged approach. It developed capacities of local governments and its functionaries to plan, budget, monitor, and facilitate child participation. On the other hand, we also built capacities of children to participate in decision-making processes through awareness generation, ensuring access to information. We created repositories of information, used different communication strategies to sensitize communities, children, and local governments. We saw a remarkable change in approach towards local development. We also saw that the participatory process in planning and monitoring led to better outcomes for children. Villages made qualitative investments on social sectors. Platforms for engaging with children became regularized. Their demands, their suggestions, their feedbacks got recorded, and actions were taken by village councils. Notably, we would see that in the Gram Panchayat development plans. State has also made major decisions in influencing child participation, and it made it as part of the planning process. Child-friendly Panchayat is one of the 9 themes under the SDG localization effort by Ministry of Panchayati Raj, Government of India. And this is an opportunity for us to push this agenda. So as we move forward, UNICEF has a greater role in creating a repository of many more such good practices, as well as instilling gender transformative and disability sensitive approaches in child-friendly local governance and building on the transformative potential of flagship programs. We can set up regular information sharing, joint planning sessions, and support the state government in policy formulation. Like many other speakers spoke, bringing adolescents to the forefront and creating more opportunities for adolescents to interact with policymakers as a catalytic advocacy effect. UNICEF India had recently created platforms for children from different states to interact with the ministry officials in a national level event. Kajal, whom you saw in the video at the start of this event, made a powerful presentation along with 4 other child speakers on the need to create platforms for children to participate at all levels. She made quite an impression, and the Ministry for Panchayati Raj is considering formation of platforms for children's participation. We really appreciate the role played by regional office as a knowledge manager to ensure dissemination of such models to a larger audience. I would like to conclude my reflections with some bit of reflections from the government side. Government's role is crucial. The previous speaker also spoke about it in institutionalizing the child participation. State must build the capacities of functionaries to facilitate child participation and put in place mechanisms to measure the participation. It will be beneficial to have a pool of resource persons to promote the concept of child-friendly Panchayat. And the state must explore and implement different communication strategies and capacity building programs to sensitize communities. It is a process intensive engagement, and we're looking forward to more milestones in this regard. Thank you.
Sanket, over to you.
माझे नाव संकेत राहुल गोळकर. मी महाराष्ट्रातील चंद्रपूर जिल्ह्यातील मक्काला या ग्रामपंचायत मधून आहे. माझी सुरुवात जेव्हा ग्रामपंचायत स्थापना झाली, बालपंचायत स्थापना झाली, तेव्हा मी त्याचा सदस्य होतो. बालस्नेही पंचायत कार्यक्रम सुरू झाला तेव्हा आमच्याकरिता हा कार्यक्रम नवीन होता, नवीन अनुभव होता. जेव्हा बालस्नेही पंचायत हा कार्यक्रम सुरू झाला तेव्हा आम्हाला आमच्या हक्क, अधिकार, ग्रामपंचायत आणि आमच्या जबाबदाऱ्याबद्दल अधिक माहिती झाली. आम्ही बालपंचायत तयार करून बालसभा घ्यायला लागलो. यातून आम्ही खूप काही शिकलो आणि गावाच्या विकासाचा भाग बनलो. यापूर्वी आम्हाला आमचे फक्त अभ्यास खेळणे हेच आमचे काम आहे हे समजायचे, किंवा घरी मदत करणे हेच आमचे काम वाटायचे. आम्ही घर किंवा गावातल्या कुठल्याही निर्णय प्रक्रियेचा भाग नव्हतो. जेव्हा बालपंचायतच्या माध्यमातून आम्हाला आमच्या हक्काबद्दल आणि मुलांच्या सरकारी योजनाबद्दल माहिती झाली, यावर आम्ही विचार करू लागलो. आम्ही आपल्या समस्या समजू लागलो, अधिकाराबद्दल बोलू लागलो. समाजामध्ये मुलांना खूप समस्यांचा सामना करावा लागतो. कुपोषण, शिक्षण, योग्य दर्जाचे शिक्षण, अंगणवाडीमध्ये शुद्ध पाण्याची सोय, टिकवून ठेवणे आणि आरोग्य व्यवस्था गावामध्ये योग्य प्रकारे ठेवणे, ज्यामुळे मुलांना काहीही त्रास होणार नाही. आम्ही मुले निर्णय प्रक्रियेचा भाग बनू शकतो, आवाज उठवू शकतो, मागण्या मांडू शकतो, यावर उपायही सांगू शकतो. त्यामुळे गावामध्ये मुलांमध्ये जागरूकता वाढली आणि बालसभेमध्ये आम्ही अनेक विषयांवर चर्चा करायला लागलो. आम्ही त्यामुळे या समस्या सोडविण्याचा मागे लागलो. जसे अंगणवाडीमध्ये आमच्या गावच्या शुद्ध पाण्याची सोय नव्हती, तर आम्ही आमच्या गावामध्ये अंगणवाडीमध्ये वॉटर फिल्टरची मागणी केली. ग्रामसभेच्या माध्यमातून आम्ही पालकांच्या सहाय्याने ग्रामसभेमध्ये मागणी केली. आमच्या गावामध्ये अंगणवाडीमध्ये आता वॉटर फिल्टर लावून देण्यात आले. तसेच आमच्या गावामध्ये एक लहान मुलगी होती, जे बालविवाह होत होता. त्याकरिता आम्ही जेव्हा ही समस्या आम्हाला तिने बालसभेमध्ये मांडून आम्हाला जेव्हा सांगितली, तेव्हा आम्ही ही समस्या पालकांच्या सहाय्याने तिच्या घरी जाऊन, सरपंचांना घेऊन जाऊन त्यांच्या घरी सांगितले की ती कायद्याने गुन्हा आहे, बालविवाह करणे हे कायद्याने गुन्हा आहे. त्यामुळे त्यांनी मग ते विवाह थांबविला आणि तिला आणखी शिक्षणास सांगितले. काही समस्या सोडविण्याकरिता आम्हाला प्रशासनाचीही आवश्यकता आहे. जसे की आमच्या गावामध्ये एक शिक्षिका होती, ती शाळेमध्ये नियमित यायची नाही, ती आम्हाला योग्य शिकवायची नाही. ती काही मुलांना म्हणजे काही कुठलेही काम सांगून ती शिकवायची नाही. आम्ही तिची तक्रार व्हिडिओकडे केली. त्या तक्रारीची त्यांनी पूर्तता केली आणि त्या शिक्षिकेची बदली दुसरीकडे केली. त्यामुळे आपल्या समस्या जाणू लागलो आणि या समस्या कोणाकडे मांडायची यावर आपण ग्रामपंचायत सोबत काम कसे करायचे हे आपल्याला कळले. ग्रामपंचायत सोबत नेहमी संवादामुळे आम्हाला समस्या मांडण्यास मदत झाली. यामुळे आपल्या गरजा ग्रामपंचायतीच्या विकास आराखड्यामध्ये समाविष्ट करण्यात आल्या. आमच्या गावामध्ये ग्रामपंचायत नियोजन प्रक्रियेदरम्यान बालसभा घेतल्या जातात. यामुळे शासन प्रक्रियेचा भाग बनू शकलो. त्यामुळे आम्हाला चांगले अनुभव आले व आपण कसे चांगले नागरिक बनू शकतो याबद्दल माहिती झाली आणि अधिकार कर्तव्याबद्दल अधिक जबाबदारपणे माहिती झाली. यानंतर आमच्या गावामध्ये अनेक काही कामं झाले, जसे जनजागृती कार्यक्रम, मुलांना त्यांच्या हक्क अधिकार सांगण्यात आले, अनेक समित्या तयार करण्यात आल्या. त्यानंतर आम्हाला असे वाटते की राज्य आणि केंद्र सरकार आपल्या प्रत्येक देशातील गावातील ग्रामपंचायतीमध्ये बालपंचायत तयार करू शकतात आणि बालपंचायत तयार करून त्यांना एक बालभवन देऊ शकतात, बालपंचायत भवन देऊ शकतात, जिथे बालसभा अनिवार्य केल्या पाहिजे आणि त्यांना ग्रामपंचायत प्रमाणे सरकारमध्ये तरतूद केली पाहिजे आणि बालपंचायत भवन प्रत्येक गावामध्ये देण्यात यावे. यामुळे अधिक गांभीर्याने आवाज उठविला जाईल आणि मुले तिथे बालसभा आणि कार्यालय असणार आणि मुलांना योग्य प्रशिक्षण देण्यात यावे. त्यांना त्यांचे हक्क, अधिकार, कर्तव्य कळणार नाही. महिला मुलांसाठीचा निधी हा मुलांवर केवळ वापरला जाईल याची काळजी सरकारने घ्यावी. युनिसेफने बालपंचायती आणि बालसभा नियमित आणि अनिवार्य करण्यास मदत करावी आणि माझ्यासारख्या मुलांना अधिक माहिती देण्यास मदत करावी. बालसभा आणि बालपंचायती आवाज उठविण्यासाठी आणि निर्णय प्रक्रियेचा भाग बनवण्यासाठी मदत केली पाहिजे. तुम्ही मला बोलण्यासाठी संधी दिली त्याबद्दल धन्यवाद.
Good evening to all. Thank you. As just now shared by Anuradha, the Child Friendly Panchayat initiative in Maharashtra emerged as a kind of logical fallout of several previous initiatives focusing on children and participatory governance. Child Friendly Panchayat initiative basically provided a kind of consolidation platform. As this pilot picked up, over a period of time, we observed 4 key milestones. Children getting organized, children getting informed, children getting mobilized to reflect upon their own situation and concerns, and finally, children getting empowered through voicing their concerns and making their presence felt in the community level governance process. So basically, Child Friendly Panchayat initiative in Maharashtra helped consolidate the learning from so many previous child-focused initiatives. As this process moved forward, we observed 4 crucial dimensions how this initiative helps. So number 1, it helps adults understand children's concerns, of course. It also helps children voice their concerns in a structured way. It also helps children understand the governance process and realize that they have a role in governance. Otherwise, it's simply not on their mental map. And fourth, it makes the governance process itself more inclusive. I would elaborate a little bit on the last point. Governance process inevitably involves conflict of interest of some kind or other. maybe over the resources, sharing of resources, prioritization, decision making, and so on. Often adults trying to change the perceptions and practices of other adults complicates, aggravates, even vitiates this conflict of interest rather than resolving it. But we observed a very interesting thing, that when our own children try to sensitize us, we can't really ignore it. We have so many powerful examples of young girls, adolescent girls stopping child marriages, children persuading their parents to give up deadly addictions. When our children teach us sanity, our hearts become much more receptive. So this is a very powerful dimension of this initiative, a powerful impact on governance process. It also helps children understand the complexities of governance. This is also, I think, a very important aspect. At that age, children probably only know how to make out the right or wrong, or what is good and what is not. But through participation in village governance or community level governance, children realize that just making out the right and wrong is not enough. It requires persuasion, voicing, negotiation, at times protests, lobbying, to be able to make the right things happen. And I think this has a very significant impact on the development of children. So basically, this is all about the making of citizens. And I would say initiatives like child-friendly local governance or child-friendly panchayat are kind of laboratories wherein children get the citizenship education. So it's all about adults finally accepting children as equal partners in the governance process. And I would say this is a very strong intergeneration bridge towards inclusive, balanced, and sustainable development. And that's where there is increasing talk about linking child-friendly governance with SDGs. Now coming to a few challenges, we have observed in Maharashtra that this process makes the state agencies and state functionaries definitely much more responsive. So the village child development and nutrition centers, village health centers, schools, they start actively seeking children's support. They start actively seeking children's participation. They start responding to children's concerns. But to establish true accountability, I feel sustained and specialized training and capacity building of state agencies, functionaries, and other stakeholders is required. And that's where I think UNICEF has a huge role to play in designing effective training capacity building strategies. Even a bigger and steeper challenge is to make the governance process, let it be planning, budgeting, program design, program implementation, making these processes really deliver for children. So through this pilot, we have seen beautiful documentation of children's state, their state of life, their plans, their charters. Now, making the system respond to this is, I think, a steep challenge. And there are already several initiatives going on jointly, collaboratively by UNICEF, institutions like Yashoda and government partners. But certainly much more work is required in this area. So this is another area where I think UNICEF has a long way to go to engage with government partners and other knowledge partners to make child-centric governance an institutional and institutionalized reality in this country. So we all share the hope, and let's wish all the best to all of us. Thank you.
Now we introduce Ashok Kumar Jha. Ashok works in Janakpur Field Office of UNICEF Nepal. Ashok will present his historical experience engaging with CFLG, Child Friendly Local Governance Program in Nepal. Child Friendly Local Governance Program is a national level program. Over to you, Ashok.
Thank you, Srijanji. And good afternoon and namaste to all. I'm working as a program officer based in one of the field office in Nepal. Thanks to Kavita for capturing the case study of Nepal, and thanks to Pava for providing the opportunity to share the experiences and learning of child-friendly local governance and child participation. First of all, we need to go back to look at how CFLG evolved in Nepal. So in 1990s, UNICEF, with support of partners, started working with women and children at the grassroots level in decentralized planning. The experiences of Dakau program have fed into the development of child-friendly local governance strategy in Nepal, which was adopted and endorsed by Nepal government in 2011. CFLG is a framework rather than a program, and an approach that seeks to enhance good governance at local level by promoting every child's right to survival, development, protection, and participation, as stated in the CRC. It aims to ensure that all children, adolescents, and women have access to social protection, education, healthcare, nutrition, sanitation, clean water, information, and other services, so that their right may be fully realized. UNICEF in CFLG has influenced in building the framework in 3 distinctive areas: developing CFLG framework, influencing policy provisions, and listening to the children. Child Club members participated in various level of planning committees throughout the country. In listening to the voices of children, CFLG creates a space and mechanism to listen to children and ensure their meaningful participation in local level planning and budgeting. Under CFLG strategy, local bodies have to achieve 39 indicators earlier, now it's 51, to be declared as child-friendly. These indicators include various aspects of child survival, protection, development, and participation, such as immunization, breastfeeding, access to safe drinking water, birth registration, child club representation, child club formation, reformation, and many more. In Nepal, participation of children ensured and mandated in local governance to various structures, such as Ward Citizen Forum, School Management Committee, Health Facility Management Committee, Municipal Council, CFLG committees. Similarly, their participation is also mandatory in the annual planning process of local bodies. Annual consultation with children, that is known as Bal Vela, are conducted prior to the planning cycle, and the demands requested by the children from Bal Vela are submitted and considered by the local authorities in their planning and budgeting. CFLG policy provision states a mandatory allocation and utilization of 10 to 15% capital grant of local level in working toward, if the local level working towards developing a child-friendly local level, which is one of the biggest steps that has been given to the local bodies to ensure demands of the children have been met. The positive role played by Child Club through CFLG framework, like different initiatives in sectors like education, health, WAS, etc., that have provided evidences that if an adequate space provided to the children and mechanisms are created for children to participate and engage, they offer meaningful input in matters that affecting them. Children engage themselves in awareness raising during school enrollment, open defecation-free, local level declaration, full immunization declaration, etc. There is huge recognition in Nepal that children can participate successfully in decision making, not only in their immediate environment, such as families or schools, but also in their communities as well as local and national levels. Children participation in local governance structures and in planning process have resulted several positive outcomes, such as the prevention of child marriage, ending corporal punishment, provision of sanitary supplies at schools, creation of children parks, and much more. And they are able to provide themselves as an agent of change for their community. Children's participation in governance structure are meaningful and valuable only when there are adults who respect the children's opinions and willing to listen to them. The roles of government officials, social mobilizers, policy makers, and other decision makers are particularly important in realizing child and adolescent rights. Balancing the involvement from children and decision making from adults is critical and the key factors in realizing an ideal, meaningful participation of children in a child-friendly local governance structures and processes. With this all, we can say that it proved that children, when empowered and provided with the right space, mechanisms, and platforms, they are capable to bring positive, sustainable changes in their communities. A number of innovative ideas and meaningful suggestions on problems related to children have been initiated by the children themselves. Children participation in local councils have made children's issues more visible and visible through advocacy and standing up for their rights. Child clubs have also been effective and participatory platforms for children to empower with confidence, leadership skills, and knowledgeable understanding on the rights to the children, and also learning democratic processes. Communication channel between children and local government. And local government officials became easier. Children's direct participation in local governance structures and processes have opened direct communication access as a result to children's engagement. Some youth-led organizations in Nepal form National CFLG Forum and continuously working to bridging the gap between policy level and implementation level to of achievements happening in Nepal. Though there is some challenges like after federalization, since the federalization started in 2015, however, clarity related to CFLG has been lacking and consultations with children have been discontinued for become tokenistic or lacking opportunities for children to think, discuss, and formulate their views, express their opinions, and be heard. To better embed children's needs in overall planning efforts in the ongoing federal context, UNICEF Nepal recently introduced a local governance output in late 2021, aligning it to the MOFAGA structure, Ministry of Federal Affairs and General Administration's structures and priority, and also to complement to PLGSP results. The renewed focus aims to enhance capacities of local government to plan, budget, and deliver child-sensitive social services, and providing catalytic support to engage children to participate and help shape pathways out of poverty and exclusion. This was particularly important in the current federal context, as many responsibilities for planning, budgeting, and delivery of key basic integrated social services have been devolved to the local level, bridging governments closer to the children and their families. So finally, regardless of the evident challenges, children's engagement in local governance has resulted in positive outcomes to the child as individual, to the children as a group, and to the entire community as well as on the behavioral change in adults. After federalization, till date, 16 municipalities already have been declared as child-friendly municipalities, and more than 24 municipalities, few wards also has been declared as CFLG ward in the municipalities. In order to accelerate the CFLG in future, higher level of commitments are required from the local level themselves. This may be achieved through capacity building initiatives for both duty bearers and right holders, and moreover, ownership of the process by provincial government in change context. Thank you. Over to you, Srijanji.
Thank you, Ashokji, for your wonderful insights regarding CFLG. So without any delay, I'd like to welcome for our next speaker, Chencho Lamo, CEO of the Bhutan Center for Media and Democracy, to speak a few words on their role in the participatory youth policy review process in Bhutan 2020 and the role of civil society in strengthening children's participation in governance. Welcome, Chencho.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
All right, okay, so thank you. Hello and kusampo to everyone here. Really happy to be able to make to this event, though I had a prior engagement today. First off, I would like to thank ADAPT section of UNICEF Regional Office for this opportunity. I'm going to share very briefly about BCMD's experience of advocating for young people's participation in decision making. As a fledgling democracy, Bhutan has the advantage of learning from democracies around the world in our pursuit to shape a democracy that is appropriate for our culture. And let me very briefly explain the cultural context that I'm speaking from. Traditionally, we are a hierarchical society. There's a lot of deference to authority and age. Also, having enjoyed a century of peaceful monarchies, citizens are not used to taking part in governance affairs, but quite content in leaving the responsibility to our leaders. Also, traditionally, the belief is that children are to be seen, but not to be heard. However, all these beliefs and practices are contested as the country transitioned to democracy. And democracy places the onus on us to choose our leaders and to hold them to account and provide critical feedback on affairs and services of the government. So these are foreign responsibilities expected of citizens that are content in minding our own personal affairs. So citizens taking part in decision making is only 13 years old in Bhutan, and young people are yet to learn to participate responsibly and to be invited to provide their views on matters that concern them. At BCMD, our approach to advocating for an enabling space for young people's participation takes a multi-pronged approach. Firstly, it includes building their sense of agency through programs that make them understand their rights with responsibilities, make them gain a deeper insight into the complexities of the issues that are of concern to them, and also help them ideate solutions that are within their circle of influence, and they get to try their hands at it. Secondly, we also create spaces for young people to test their voice and see how it can influence decisions. We also advocate on issues through research reports based on empirical evidence. And The review of the National Youth Policy 2011 back in 2019 and 2020 exemplifies this approach. So what we did was we capacitated 24 youth to review the National Youth Policy in depth. And from that 24 youth, we built the capacity of 18 young people to co-facilitate focus group discussions with us. And together with the youth, we conducted focus groups with 114 youth across the country. And we had youth ranging from, young people doing prison terms to monks and nuns, LGBTI, unemployed youth, young people with disabilities, and so on. We also had an online survey floated, which had 1,099 respondents. So the data from all these, different platforms went on to informing the revision of the National Youth Policy. And in 2020, again, young people were involved in organizing campaign with the tagline, "Future is Now." And the campaign covered 5 thematic areas stemming from our review of the National Youth Policy, and included themes like the need to improve the quality of education, mental health services, the need for young people's participation, and social media usage and unemployment, and so on. However, because of the pandemic, the endorsement of the revised policy is delayed, but we are hopeful that it'll be endorsed soon. The revised policy is a lot more comprehensive, covering new areas with greater insights into complexities of the issues as experienced by the young people. The revised document has policy statements on new areas such as youth in conflict with the law, youth in vulnerable occupations, and the need for better social protection, the emerging need for media literacy in this digital age, and more importantly, the impetus on civic participation of young people. In conclusion, I would like to just highlight two important roles that I see of civil society organizations, the role that CSOs can play in linking children with state institutions and decision-making spaces. Firstly, as a civil society organization, I think we come as a neutral third party, and we are in a better position to mediate the space where young people feel safe to be open and critical. So from my perspective, I think CSOs are in a better position to shed light on issues with objectivity and in sensitive areas. Secondly, CSOs, because we are small, we have the advantage of being focused, nimble, and less bureaucratic. And this means that CSOs can apply multi-pronged strategies that not only solicit views of young people on issues, but also ensure that the process of the engagement is transformational. So in this way, I think young people not only feel that we picked on their brains, but they also feel empowered with a sense of agency to speak on issues in the future. So very brief. Thank you so much for listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shencho, and thank you to everyone else. What a range of ideas, practices, and analysis. I'm not going to even try to kind of summarize now, but before we go to wrapping up, any questions to the speakers from the audience? What you would please do is type your question on the chat box, and we will call on you to ask the question. Those who are unable to do that may speak up or raise their hands. And we have a team who will be sort of monitoring the chat. So any questions, please write your answer or raise your hand if you're unable to do that. Thank you so much. It can be to Kavita or to the speakers from the country. anything that's comfortable to you. You can even put on, raise your hand and.
Yeah, Pratima, you can ask.
सम्पूर्णमा मेरो नाम चाहिँ प्रतिमा पाण्डे, म चाहिँ नेपालबाट, म सैनामैना नगरपालिका 9 शङ्करको रूपन्देहीबाट। मेरो अब सबैको सुन्ने हो हैन, मेरो चाहिँ जस्तै यो बालमैत्रीको कुराहरू आयो, अनि यो बालबालिकाहरू हरेक कुरा जस्तै नेपालको सन्दर्भमा चाहिँ हरेक कुरामा अगाडि निर्णय प्रक्रियादेखि लिएर हरेक कुरामा सक्षम छन् भन्ने कुरा आयो। त्यसैगरी चाहिँ यो नेपालको यो सबै यो 77वटै जिल्लामा चाहिँ बालमैत्रीको अवस्था चाहिँ कस्तो छ हैन, सबै ठाउँमा त यो नहोला, शब्द कस्तो छ व्यवस्था बालमैत्रीको, मेरो जिज्ञासा नै यही हो है।
Ashok sir. Ashok would be the best person to answer the question, I think.
Yes.
Ashok, would you like to respond? And then Kavita can come in with the findings of the study as well on the child responsiveness of CFLG.
Yeah, as Pratima asked about the overall status, overall status of child friendly in Nepal, yeah, and she is from one of the municipality named Sainamaina. So Pratima ji, as you asked, so yeah, all 753 local governments have not initiated the CFLG. As I have already mentioned that till date, only 16 municipalities out of 753 has already been declared as CFLG municipality. Similarly, another 24 municipalities, they have declared some of their wards as CFLG wards, and they are also working to declare their whole municipality as a CFLG municipalities. So recently, we have not done any research or assessment for overall municipalities status. So at this point in time, it's difficult to say that what is the status of CFLG in all 753 municipalities. Thank you.
Yeah, Pratima, thank you very much. I was missing a young person from Nepal speaking, so I'm so happy you spoke up. You see, what we found when we were studying is when CFLG started, Nepal had a central government and locally the villages were implementing program. So one decision at the national level meant everybody will go and implement it. Now what has happened is, as a democracy, you have local governments which are quite independent. So it's a change. So which means not just one central government has to accept it, but all local governments have to accept it. So it is a challenge. So earlier one agreed and accepted and said to the local governments, you go ahead and implement it. Now that cannot happen because every local government can take decisions, which is a good thing, but every local government also has to believe in this. So it will take some time, and all of you go ahead and start saying that if other local governments can do it, why can't we do it? So please take that leadership like you have done in children's clubs before. And also for you, you have the strength of your constitution, you have the strength of your policy, and you have the strength of the CFLG guidelines. Many countries don't have it. So please use it. And there is also the National CFLG Forum, which has a lot of old child club members. Please talk to them. Some of them are here listening to you. Please get in touch with them and then help all local governments in Nepal to start this. So be in that leadership. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Kavita and Ashok. Any other questions? You can come. Yes. Yep, of course. Please go ahead.
जस्तै अब यो तपाईँले भनिहाल्नुभयो अब जस्तै यो हाम्रो समाजमा चाहिँ हैन देशमा चाहिँ यो लैङ्गिक तथा अल्पसंख्यक बालबालिकाहरू पनि त छन् नि त हो यिनीहरू बालबालिकाहरूलाई पनि जस्तै अन्य जस्तै हामी जस्तै अन्य बाल क्लबमा पनि त समावेश गर्न सकिन्छ होला नि त यस्तो चाहिँ हामीले सुनेको छैन नि त अझैसम्म पनि लैङ्गिक तथा अल्पसंख्यक बालबालिकाहरूलाई पनि यस्तै हामी जस्तैमा जोड्न पाए अझै राम्रो हुन्थ्यो हैन उनीहरूले पनि हामीहरूबाट नि केही कुरा थाहा पाउँथे उनीहरू पनि अगाडि बढ्न सक्थे नि त कति लैङ्गिक तथा अल्पसंख्यक बालबालिकाहरू त कति पछाडि छन् नि त हाम्रो समाजमा ती बालबालिकाहरूलाई पनि त अगाडि ल्याउन यस्तो बाल क्लबहरू आवश्यक पर्छ अनि हामीसँगै समावेश गराउन सके अझ राम्रो हुन्थ्यो भन्ने चाहिँ कुरा हो यसलाई चाहिँ कसरी अगाडि बढाउन सकेला भन्ने प्रश्न चाहिँ मेरो है
May I respond?
Yes, Kavita, please.
Pratima, again, wonderful question. Recently in Nepal, we know groups like CVIN, Child Workers in Nepal, and the Children at Risk Network. They have had a meeting of young people from sexual minorities. Apparently, it was an amazing program. So please, I request your team members from Nepal to put you all in touch with that organization and children there. And also, like you said, it is not only children from sexual minorities. We found that children who are working on the streets, children who are working especially in urban areas also have very little opportunities. So it is wonderful that you are thinking of those who are completely left out. And I'm sure you can also have this discussion within Nepal. It has started, but it is very early days. But thank you very much for thinking about it.
Darshini, can I add to that?
Yes, of course. Please, Urmila. Go ahead.
One more way that children from gender and sexual minorities can be included is for child clubs and other setups such as that to collaborate with organizations already working on LGBTQIA issues in Nepal, and if you like, also connect with organizations in India where the movement is very much advanced, to look for tips and other methods of advocacy on these issues.
And also, there is a very good example from Bhutan where young people are working with sexual minorities, and they were very active in our consultation. So that's another group you can get in touch with.
Thank you. We look forward to keep putting everyone in touch. We also work with networks of people in India and Nepal working on gender and sexual diversity issues. Then we'll really like to put everyone in touch and hope this becomes a network for that. Yes, any other questions?
Person is Sanket raised his hand.
Yes, Sanket.
Thank you, sir.
Go ahead. Yes, Sanket, please go ahead.
मॅम हे जे आपण जे बालस्नेही ग्रामपंचायत हा प्रोजेक्ट चालवत आहोत, हा प्रोजेक्ट आपण प्रत्येक गावामध्ये आपण चालवू शकतो का? त्या कारणाने आपण तेथील सर्व मुलांच्या समस्या आपण सोडवू शकतो.
Kavita?
Would anybody from Maharashtra team like to respond? Because you're already working on it. I'm aware of that. Would you like to share, please?
I'm here, so I'll just respond to this question. Sanket, there is a great opportunity for us to, at this point of time, with the localization of SDGs, child-friendly local governance is one of the key themes, and the state is already looking at how do we sort of make it a reality in every gram panchayat of actually the country, not just Maharashtra. So there is a policy framework that has been developed at this point of time, and it creates a great opportunity and also pulling in resources for pushing this agenda. So yes.
Anything you want to add, Kavita or Urmila, to Sanket's question?
Yes, I would like to add two things. One is, I'm so happy you raised this question, and I do hope, Sanket, all of you can be part of that resource team to help children who have not experienced this before to know what does this mean? What are the difficulties? What are the challenges? And today we also had a person from Yashada who's speaking. They are supposed to be training people in the whole state. They have the training module, they have the money, they have the equipment to train it. So if you also talk to them, maybe some of you can be part of that training program as well. So while the government teaches their people what to do, you all can play a very important role helping children how to form Bal Sabhas, how to form Bal Panchayats, how to use it. That will be very, very good support.
Thank you, Kavita. Urmila, would you like to come in?
No, I have nothing to add to that. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Thank you, everyone. I think that's an important question from a child asking how they can engage better with other young people. Very good question. Anybody else with questions? I know it has been a long day, but
in the chat box, there is a question for Chencho, I think.
So, okay, I mean, I think that question is about the
Hello, ma'am. Namaste.
हाँ, yes.
म चाहिँ नेपालबाट मेरो नाम चाहिँ अनुष्का पौडेल नेपालको बर्दिया जिल्लाबाट मलाई चाहिँ के सोध्न मन लागेको छ भनेपछि युनिसेफ जस्ता विभिन्न संस्थाहरूले चाहिँ समाजमा भएका समस्याहरूलाई उन्मूलन गरेको छ त्यस्तो संस्थाहरूसँग चाहिँ कसरी जोडिन सकिन्छ भन्ने कुरा मेरो रहेको छ र त्यसको साथसाथै चाहिँ यस्तो संस्थाहरू बर्दिया जिल्लामा छ कि छैन कसरी जोडिन सकिन्छ म्याम
Thank you, Anushka, for that question. Can I hand over to the Nepal country office to respond about Bardia district and engagement? Ashok, Pragya, is there anyone, Toya or Pragya, who can respond to that? From Nepal country office? Ashok, yes please.
So, thank you for the question. I just forgot the name of बहिनीको नाम के हो मैले चाहिँ बिर्सेँ है so she is from Bardia. For your information, we have field offices, 3 field offices in Nepal. One is in Nepalganj, that is nearby Bardia, because Banki and Bardia is adjoining district, and we have our zone office in Nepalganj. So you can also communicate over there. You can go or visit in our office as well over there, so that you can ask them whether our program is in Bardia or not. That's all at this point of time, yeah. Because we are not covering all 77 districts. We are working in few districts and intensively in few palikas only in Nepal, yeah.
Thank you, Ashok. Thank you for responding to her. Yes, and on the Bhutan youth policy, there's some content in the study as well on how the review has revived the older policy and it's being strengthened. I don't know whether Sonam is here or wants to come in on the question to Chencho. Yes, it's okay. We will.
I may also come in.
Yes,
I
please.
may also come in.
Yes, Darshini.
Sonam, yes, please go ahead.
Sonam, please.
Yeah, thank you so much for asking this question. Our colleague Sanju mentioned in the beginning, so the 2011 National Youth Policy, it wasn't really comprehensive in terms of engaging young people, but nevertheless, a lot of the adolescence programs are also based on the National Youth Policy of 2011. But the unique thing about the 2021, the revision of the national policy in 2020 was there were a lot of consultations being organized with the young people, and then their voices are also captured adequately in the revised national policy. So in terms of the engagement of young people, so it was really a conscious effort in partnership with Bhutan Center for Media and and as well as the Ministry of Education, the Royal Government of Bhutan. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonam. Thank
May
you so
I add a little bit to that?
Yes,
because the question was also on implementation. The officials in Bhutan also said they were very open and forthcoming. They said we had a policy, but we did not have an action plan last time. So this time they have made it mandatory that for every policy suggestion, they are also asking to come with an action plan so that it becomes easy to follow, and to also say which department of the government is responsible for what. Because like adolescents, youth also cover many different departments. So right now they are trying to do that. Hopefully this will be more effectively implemented than the last one.
Thanks, Kavita. Urmila, anything else? Any observations Urmila would like to make?
Yes, just to add, not directly connected, but there is, for Bhutan, there is a volunteer management information system, which has a list of all the organizations and youth groups that are working on it. So if anybody is interested, you can register your organization and also see what others are doing. I will just link it in the chat so people can take a look.
Yes, that's very useful. Thank you. Thank you, Urmila.
Sir, एउटा last question सोध्छु न है?
Yes, please.
हामी चाहिँ
Please name yourself and yeah.
मेरो नाम चाहिँ प्रतिमा पाण्डे। मैले चाहिँ हामी चाहिँ यो युनिसेफको ग्रुपमा चाहिँ हामी जोइन हुन पाइन्छ कि पाइदैन, नेपाल लगायत अन्य देशहरुमा नि त छ नि त, त्यसमा चाहिँ हामी जोइन हुन पाइन्छ कि पाइदैन भनेर।
That's a great question, Pratima. And I think just to respond, I will respond and anybody else can also come in, is one thing we are thinking about at UNICEF at the regional level. You're talking about connecting with other young people in other countries, right? In terms of how we can have young people advising us on the way we do programming at the regional level. So there's a lot of discussion now in how we make it happen and also how we link youth groups across the region. One way in which we are doing this is in water and sanitation. In fact, we are having a meeting on the 23rd of June with young people working on water and sanitation to see what is the common agenda they want to build across countries in water and sanitation, in environment. And I think it's also up to children like you, and it's lovely to hear you speak and ask questions, to make those queries, to say that you want to be heard, to say that you want to engage with UNICEF, and we will make more and more effort to get you involved. And it's such a pleasure to hear from you today, and we hope you will also join. Let's see whether you can join the 23rd meetings. I'm sure you'll have a lot to say about water, sanitation, environment, which is what young people are really talking about these days. And let's see whether we can build more groups across the countries with young people like you. Thank you so much. Anything else that anybody would like to add? Yes, please. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Kavita, Urmila, anything else?
I think Urmila had an observation just from us.
Please,
Urmila.
Yeah.
Please, Urmila.
Just as a closing remark, that participation shouldn't be a separate, vertical. It should be embedded across verticals of programming in UNICEF. And I think that really came out for us. If we need to move this forward, it has to be something that WASH and child protection and social policy and all of the different verticals take on as part of
Thank you, Urmila. I think that's a very important observation. I think we also found in your study and other studies that when young people participate, it also tends to bring different sectors together because they start looking at the young person and all the needs around the young person. So that's something we are finding not just in your study, but in other studies. And we are trying to promote that concept and how we implement it. Thank you so much. And I think now we have come to the end of a session and heard from UNICEF staff who have pioneered new ways of working with governments who have innovated within their institutions, and that is a laudable task. Children who have inspired, organized, and changed the way we even think of programming. And we think of results, not just programming, but about results, and civil society who has always been supportive, engaged, and by the side of children in supporting them to have a voice and be heard in those bigger decision-making spaces. It's impossible to kind of summarize all the rich discussions, but we will be sharing the videos and also maybe the networks who participated today, including a lot of young people's networks with each other, so that you can continue this conversation as well as join up with UNICEF to kind of, suggest new ways for us to work as well. So thank you. And also we want to mention something very special we are also doing with CWC, Kavita, and a lot of other partners, is there will be an upcoming massive open online course on children's participation in institutional settings, where young people like yourselves and government officials like yourself are speaking up on their good practices to form a sort of a training course of 25 modules, but it's like a, like a 10-hour course, which is not such a bad thing. It is for adults, but in terms of how we make our institutions function better to engage with children, how we open up our institutions. And thank you to Sirjan for reminding me to say that, because he's very much engaged with the MOOC. And so we do hope that you all will be people who will promote the learning and the capacity building that will happen through the MOOC. Once again, before we leave, just want to thank everyone. It's just impossible to sort of say how amazing this experience of the case study process has been, engaging with Kavita, Dunu, and Urmila, as well as a range of country officers as well. And thank you so much for the support. And we just want to have everyone on screen for a bit in terms of just to say thank you. First of all, Kavita Ratna, Dunu Roy, and Urmila, who were the principal authors. Unfortunately, Dunu is not with us, but please open your cameras and show your faces. And then we also want to thank the children who participated today as speakers. Sanket, Nagis, I'm not sure whether Kajal is here today, but Kajal and everyone else who is building collectives in their communities and engaging with government to bring change. Please put on your cameras. Is that possible to put on the cameras?
Yeah, they have.
Oh, they have, I'm sorry.
Hello, everyone.
Okay, hi, Nagis. Thank you so much. And all of you who are there, I think we've met some of you. It has been an amazing experience. Thank you, Sanket. Sanket is also walking back home, I think. Thank you so much for everything. And then we also would like to thank Sumit Gurja of Yashada, who is in continuous conversations with UNICEF Rosa, to Anuradha Shankar, the Additional Director General of Police in Madhya Pradesh, who gave an amazingly inspiring speech. Thank you so much to both of you. It's been an incredible experience for Madhya Pradesh and Rosa both to be speaking and engaging with you all. And also, not least, Lolichan Pulam Plavil and Advaita Marathi, please put on your cameras from Madhya Pradesh, Anuradha Nair, Rajani Pavitran from Maharashtra, Pragya Shakharki, Ashok Kumar Jha, and Toyanath Subedi from the Nepal country office, who've been constantly supporting with the UFLG study. Amrit Kumar Singh, who has been a dedicated person working from Madhya Pradesh, working with the children and enabling their participation in diverse UNICEF ROSA processes. And then also Chencho, I'm sorry, Chencho has left for the day, but Chencho as well. Thank you so much to all of you. And finally, and definitely not the least, Sirjan Adhikari and Sudhir Bhattarai, who are UNV specialists working with us, Africa Mukaneto and Asha Chetri, who are like ADAPT professionals, you're working on UNICOD, for your constant engagement around youth engagement and empowerment, and for making all this happen. And thank you to the audience and the children for the wonderful questions they asked. And we hope we will be in touch. Goodbye, everyone.
And Darshini.
And yes, sorry.
Senarate, come on, let's see you.
Thank you to Darshini.
Thank you.
Thank you, Namaste. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Namaste.
Thank you.
Namaste. Namaste. Thank you.
Thank you and bye-bye.
Thank you,
so
UNICEF team.
much.
Wonderful. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Very impressive program. Thank you.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, boss.
A lot of wonderful children.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yes, thank you.
Bye-bye.
I have one question.
Yeah, please. Who is this?
Yeah. Yes. More questions.
What's your question?
निशा भन्नु न
नेपालीबाट भन्छु सम्पूर्ण मेरो नमस्कार म चाहिँ निशा चौधरी उहाँ चाहिँ मेरो साथी कृष्णमाया महतो हाम्रो चाहिँ युनिसेफ अफिस हाम्रो जिल्लाको नजिकै छ कि छैन मतलब छ भने कति टाढा छ हामी युनिसेफ भन्दा मतलब कसरी जोड्न सक्छौँ युनिसेफ संस्थासँग
कुन जिल्लाबाट भन्नुभयो तपाईले
निशा where are you from निशा
कुन जिल्लाबाट निशाजी तपाई कुन जिल्लामा
नवलपरासीबाट छ
ए नवलपरासीबाट अघि हाम्रो साथीले पनि
right okay so Ashok you have to tell them whether we can sort of connect with her.
Darshini Toya is there.
Yeah.
Toya, yes. So about that area.
मतलब सुरुमा सोध्थे अनि त्यो हुन्छ नि त नेटवर्क प्रब्लम अनि कुनै साथीले सोधिसक्नु भछ के भनेर सोधौं कि नसोधौं तै पनि आफ्नो मनमा जिज्ञासा आएको त सोध्नै पर्यो त्यही भएर मैले सोधिए
हुन्छ धन्यवाद म छोटोमा भन्छु हाम्रो तीनवटा फिल्ड अफिसहरु छ
would you like to respond?
Darshini, Nawalparasi, I want to respond.
Okay,
there
sure.
are young people working in Nawalparasi. UNICEF may not be there, but I'm sure your colleagues there can put you in touch. They are working with the municipality. And you must get in touch, Nisha. We will make sure somebody gives you the contact, okay?
Toya is from Nepal. So let's see.
Yes, thank you so much. Nawalparasi चाहिँ हाम्रो we have field office in Bhairava and also in Nepalganj. So our programs, we have some programs in Nawalparasi as well in few municipalities. As Kavita mentioned, you can also contact the programs as well as our field offices there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nisha. Is that good? Is that good? Okay.
हामी पनि केही सहयोग गर्न सक्छौं निशा बहिनीलाई हाम्रो पनि सम्पर्क छ तल
पनि चिनेछु तिलतम सरसँग पनि धेरै प्रोग्राममा म सहभागी भएको छु नबुझेको कुरा उहाँसँग चाहिँ सोध्छु म
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. Very good.
Thank you. What lovely children. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot, everyone. It has been a pleasure. Bye-bye. And we'll keep in touch. And thank you to the
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye. Thank you to
Namaste, behalf of the National CFLG Forum.
Bye.
All the translators, a special thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye. Interpreters, thank you for working so hard. And Grisha, thank you. Sunil and Danish, thank you so much. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye. Bye.